Roundtree.
Here.
Councilmember Borton.
Here.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Here.
And Mayor DeVerde is absent.
If you'd all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll have our invocation from Pastor Randy Rhodes from the Vineyard Meridian Church. Welcome, Randy. And please join us in the invocation or take this as a moment of silence.
Thank you this evening for this time when we gather to make decisions on behalf of this great city. Lord, we thank you for our mayor and every one of these council members and all of our city officials. And as we think about this month being Thanksgiving month, we are grateful to you, God, for our nation and for the freedoms that we have here. So we ask, Lord, tonight that you would give your wisdom to each of these council members as they make decisions. You'd give your wisdom, and you would give, Lord, them the knowledge and all they need to make those decisions that protect our community and that is for the good of our community. And we appreciate, Lord, the fact that that is their heart. And so thank you for this meeting tonight. We give it to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Randy?
Thank you.
Randy? I don't think you've officially received that, but that's the City of Meridian pin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Next item is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd.
on the agenda, item 6C has been requested by the applicant to continue to December 1st, 2015. Item 6E has been requested to continue to December 1st, 2015. And on item 9, the executive session, it has been asked to add section F, which is to consider and advise its legal representatives of pending litigation. With that, I move we accept the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Next item, before we go on, those folks that may be here for item 6E, the continuance has been requested because the applicant's representative could not be here this evening, and they are still working on comments. So the hearing will open, but we will have no presentation on the application this evening unless staff feels that it's necessary. And if you're here for that, you won't know what they're presenting, and we won't know what they're presenting. So unless you want to sit through the rest of the meeting, there probably won't be any testimony this evening. But if you wish to come on December 1st, or if you wish to provide written testimony, that's welcome as well. Okay. Next item is a consent agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrne.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as published and for the president to sign and the clerk to attest.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Milam.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
The next item under action items, item 6, is a public hearing for the TEFRA hearing for Ambrose School. And I will officially open the public hearing for that. And if there's a representative out there from Ambrose, would you please come forward and tell us about this particular hearing?
All the way. Yep.
All the way up here, give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Kirk Vanderleest, and my address is, our address is 6100 North Locust Grove Road in Meridian. So this is for a refinance, a bond refinance that we're undergoing through Wells Fargo to acquire and build, acquire 8 acres and to build out the final structure on our existing parcel.
And for the record, would you tell us what TEFRA stands for?
Great question. I have a piece of paper here that I think can help me in that. And I don't know what that stands for. I apologize. I'm before you tonight as a member of the board of directors,
Okay.
asking to stand in front of you.
Are there any questions?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I searched out the handy Google, and according to that, it says that TEFRA is the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982. It's a federal law dealing with basically tax revenue and bonding. Maybe the member of our legal department can add any other additional information that he deems necessary.
Mr. President, and members of the council, this is simply a part of the process for the Ambrose School to receive these bonds from the Public Finance Authority. The local jurisdiction that the school is in, the bondholder is in, basically hosts the hearing. That's why we're here. All that we'll be doing at the close of the hearing is taking a motion to approve the document that the city has held the hearing, doesn't have any objection to the bond, and there you go.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Zaremba?
just to clarify our role in this, my understanding is that, of course, Ambrose School is a private organization that's not an arm of the city,
Correct.
and they are either taking or renewing a loan, and the city's position is not to take on any responsibility for the loan, but to assure the lender that this is an organization that does business in our city and is known to us. I believe that's the only part we're being asked to respond to. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes. And the documents that the mayor will sign say that.
Any other questions? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to testify? I see no one, and I'll comment that there has been no written testimony received. So I will officially close the hearing and seek a motion on the proposed not the resolution, but the actions that have been requested.
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd?
I think we need a motion to close the public hearing first, don't we?
No, this isn't. If you wish, it's.
Okay, whatever. Well, then I'll make a motion that we, City Council approves the Public Finance Authority Educational Facility Revenue Refunding and Improvement Bonds for Ambrose School, Series 2015, and for the Council President to sign and the clerk to attest.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the motion stated. Roll call? Roll call.
Thank you. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need another motion? Do we need a motion for both those documents or just the one?
This is just affirms the public hearing.
Mr. Council President, I think the motion was inclusive that
Okay.
all appropriate documents will be signed by the Council President.
Very good. The next item is item 6B, public hearing, continued from October 20th for the Woodland Springs subdivision. Listing a time extension, staff.
Thank you, President Roundtree, members of the council. The application before you is a request for a time extension on the preliminary plat for Woodland Springs subdivision. This property is located at the northeast corner of North Locust Grove Road and East McMillan Road. The applicant requests a 2-year time extension on the preliminary plat to obtain the city engineer's signature on the second and final phase final plat. This is the 4th time extension requested by the applicant. The preliminary plat was approved in 2007, and the first phase final plat was recorded in 2008. With all extensions, the council may require compliance with current provisions of the UDC as a condition for granting the time extension. As conditions of approval of the subject time extension, staff recommends future development comply with the design standards in effect at the time of development, and that a vehicular cross-access egress easement and a pedestrian pathway stub is provided to the property to the north for future interconnectivity, as shown on the plan before you. No written testimony has been received on this application. Staff is recommending approval of the requested time extension with the conditions in the staff report. Staff will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff?
I have none.
Seeing none, does the applicant want to make some comments? Please. You'd state your name and address for us.
My name's Matt Morgan, 4543 McAllen Lane, Idaho Falls, Idaho. I'd like to thank the City Council tonight for your time in considering my my extension on my preliminary plat. With the change in the economy, we're still doing our best as developers of the property to regain some ground and get the project jump-started and moving forward. So we're still pursuing our same approvals that were approved in 2008, 7, I guess it was. With that said, I respectfully would like to dispute some of the staff's recommendations in the interest of what I understand is a new some new standards and guidelines as it relates to the cross-access agreement and the ingress easement that's being proposed on the north. And my reasons in disputing that are that in my conditions of approval, when we started this development, one of the conditions for approval was that I place a fence on both my east property lines and my north property line. That's in my development agreement, which is contradictory to having cross-access across my property line on the north. But also, my dispute is further in the interest of, for a cross-access agreement at either of these locations, there's no proposed development plan with the neighboring property north of me. And I believe that the comprehensive plan calls for residential development on the north as well, which I don't know necessarily lends itself to a cross-access agreement up on the north road frontage on Locust Grove. As far as the pedestrian pathway cross-access agreement in the back, if you look at our plan for our land plan for our development, I think that the pedestrian pathway in the back would cross in behind the inline retail building that we intend to build there. And I don't know that in the interest of in the evenings that would necessarily be a safe passage of pedestrians back in behind that building in this particular situation. So with those reasons, I just respectfully would like to request extension of my preliminary plat without these additional guidelines that I guess go along with the new ordinance that's been put in place since I started this development.
Questions?
Mr. President? Mr. Morgan, just a question. With a 2-year extension, that's going to put you in a decade from when you first brought this project here. What assurances that we're not going to see you again asking for another 2-year extension?
I can't give any guarantees on that, but I can assure you that time that's passed since then is strictly due to the downturn in the economy And we're doing everything we can to market the property. We're using, Colliers is helping us market the property, and we're doing everything we can. We've aggressively negotiated on several different deals that have come our way just in the last 12 to 18 months. And the Colliers brokers are telling me that things are looking more positive all the time for the development. And I mean, we've been able to hang on. We weren't like a lot of other developments that went into foreclosure and bankruptcy. My partners, Ball Ventures, and I, we both have a substantial amount of money invested in this project, and I can assure you we're doing everything in our power to try to get things moving forward so that it'll work economically for us in the city.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wish to provide testimony? Seeing none, are there any more questions for Mr. Morgan or staff?
Mr. President, I guess I would like to have staff maybe address the issues that Mr. Morgan brought up regarding the pathways and cross-access.
President Roundtree, Councilman Mylum. There is a requirement on here for fencing around the north and I believe it was east perimeter boundaries. That does still stand. However, a section of that fencing could be, I'm not sure if it's existing or not, but if it is, it could be removed for the cross-access. We do like to see pedestrian and vehicular cross-access and interconnectivity between residential subdivisions and commercial for neighborhood commercial uses.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Zaremba.
I would just like to comment, the idea behind cross-access agreements is so that customers, drivers, don't need to go out onto the arterial road in order to get from property to property. And in my opinion, that would be useful and true whether the neighbor is residential or not.
Other comments, questions? Mr. Morgan, you get the last word.
I just don't think that the conditions here lend themselves that well to cross-access agreement, but I guess my comments will just stand as stated, so,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no more folks wishing to testify, do we have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd,
I move we close the public hearing on H 2015-002.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on item 6B. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. What are your wishes?
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd,
I move we approve the 2-year time extension for H 2015-002, and in this time extension include staff recommendations for cross-access and ingress easements. That's it.
do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, as stated. Roll call vote.
Mr.
Thank
President,
Mr.
Mr. President, did the motion include the staff condition with regards to compliance with UDC conditions
Yes,
as well?
yes,
Okay.
with the staff conditions.
Roll call.
Councilmember Cavanagh,
No.
Councilmember Mylum,
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd,
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Okay, next item is item 6C. I have a motion to continue that item.
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we continue H 2015-004 to December 1st, 2015.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue item 6C. All those in favor of the continuance signify by aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is item 6D, public hearing for Stinker Station at Paramount Commercial. H 2015-0012. Staff?
Thank you, President Roundtree, Councilman. The next application before you is a request for City Council review. This site consists of 1 acre of land. It's on CG, located at 1410 West McMillan Road, just off the northeast corner of McMillan and Linder Roads. A conditional use permit was recently approved for a drive-through establishment on this site within 300 feet of another drive-through facility, and extended hours of operation, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for a convenience store and restaurant and a fuel facility in the CG district adjacent to residential uses. The hours for the drive-through are restricted from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. The extended hours did not apply to the drive-through. The applicant is requesting City Council review of the following conditions of approval associated with the conditional use permit. The first condition is number 1.2D, which requires a 25-foot wide landscape buffer to be provided adjacent to the residential uses to the north, unless otherwise approved by council. The applicant proposes a reduced buffer width ranging from 7 to 11 feet between the drive-through driveway and the east-west cross-access driveway located along the north boundary of the site adjacent to Linder Springs Apartments. The buffer is proposed to contain a 6-foot-tall CMU sound and screen wall and landscaping. The reduction does not affect building setbacks. So just to kind of go through this is the drive-through window here, cars going through the drive-through, the proposed buffer. The line here is the proposed CMU wall, and this area here is the cross-access driveway that goes between the properties here within this subdivision. There is a 5-foot wide landscape buffer and 6-foot-tall wood fence along the north boundary of this lot adjacent to the residential uses that was put in with that development. Their second request is to condition number 1.5, which requires the fuel canopy for the fuel facility to incorporate materials and colors consistent with the convenience store and restaurant. The applicant requests to be relieved from this requirement. The proposed canopy, as shown there, is finished with aluminum composite panels, faced with Sinclair graphics per Sinclair Fuels branding and imaging requirements, and is a recognized element used by the company to brand and identify themselves to their customers. There has been no written testimony submitted on this application, and staff will stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? Seeing none, is the applicant present?
For the record, Jim Marsh with CSHQA Architects, 200 Broad Street, Boise. Members of council, we're very excited to work with Stinker Stations as they're remodeling some of their stores, bringing some new C-stores to the valley, and this is our first new ground-up Stinker with Stinker stores. Currently just remodeled one in the Hyde Park area, so we're very excited to work with them as they're upgrading some of their stores. I think staff kind of went over the issues real quickly. The building is approximately 50 feet south of the property line with the adjacent property owner with the residential portion. Stinker's had several conversations, actually has a letter of approval or acceptance with the adjacent residential owner. We went through some concessions and some back and forth with providing the sound wall, locating where the menu boards and the order boards would be. as well as limiting the hours of the drive-through portions of it. So what we have here is a nice landscape planter that still buffers the building from the adjacent residential, but also includes a 6-foot sound wall that should help any transmittance of sounds from the drive-through window or the order board as well. To be relieved of the condition for the canopy, we are providing a similar material on the building as on the canopy. Canopy is a branding piece for Sinclair, just like Ford or Chevy is. People are very particular about their fuel as well, and so that is the direction we'd like to proceed, is with a branded fuel. We have worked with Stinker in trying to find complementary colors that go with the green, so that it still works as a whole, as well as the white that's going to be on the Stinker signage, and some of the background pieces will be complementary to the white that's on the canopy as well. Also, we have a access point across the back and a pedestrian pathway that we're connecting to the adjacent residential across the back that runs around to the front of the store. It matches up to where their pedestrian crossing is in the and gate in the back fence. I think that pretty much concludes it. I'd stand for any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Mr. President, did you say you had that letter with you, or did you present it to?
We presented it to staff.
Do we have
but
that?
we do have one with us. If you'd like to, we can bring it forward.
I didn't see.
It's in the packet.
It was presented, I think, at least in the CUP portion, correct, Sonny?
Yeah, I can attest to that. The city did receive a letter from the adjacent property owner stating they were okay with the reduced buffer.
Thank you.
Mr. President. Quick question, the 7 to 11 feet of landscape buffer, is that a range, or is that?
Yeah, as you can see on the where, yeah, it's thinner, kind of where our exiting is, and for the escape lane. So what we're doing is where you can see the term residential on the top of the screen. That's where the connection to the adjacent residential is. As pedestrians from there would proceed south, we pick up a sidewalk against the building, so pedestrians have a safe path around to the face of the building. So that narrows up that drive aisle just a little bit on that landscaping. That clarifies it.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
This is a public hearing. Are there any individuals that wish to testify? Don't see anybody. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Borton.
a question for staff. With regards to the canopy, was there any discussion or give and take with regards to any of its design elements? Looking at the UDC condition about materials and colors consistent with, seems somewhat flexible. Was there any progress made?
President Roundtree, Councilman Borden, no. They didn't propose any alternatives. They just would like it approved as is.
Were there proposals or alternatives that staff presented that thought would fit that condition, that might be a middle ground, that weren't acceptable?
There were some suggestions made, basically in color, some material to the pillars of the canopy, at the very least. There's not a lot you can do with these, but color helps a lot.
None of it was acceptable.
No.
Other questions? I do have a sign up here for Steve Watts wishing to testify for. You don't have to come up here if you don't want to. I've got your...
I'm Steve Watts with Stinker Stores. Do you need my address?
Yes.
300 North Orchard Street in Boise.
Thank you.
Just like to thank you for the opportunity to come before you and have you consider our request. What I'd like to share with you is we spent a great deal of time working with the neighbors. We held a neighborhood meeting, spent a great deal of time talking with each of the members of the apartment complex on both the reduced landscape barrier request as well as colors and renderings. Spent quite a bit of time with the developer and the staff and folks here, and believe that we came to a solution that's going to look very complementary to the development. As Jim shared with you, CSHQA spent a lot of time on colors and design, and as you see from the picture, the lines in the canopy match the lines in the front of the building, and we feel like, given what we had to work with, we made it as complementary as we could. The colors, I think, look nice, and I think it'll be a welcomed addition to the development, so appreciate your consideration. As far as different colors go, fuel brands are much like car brands or anything else that have a lot of brand loyalty. It's a recognized part of the Stinker brand, as is true with any gas station. So as we look around Meridian and Boise, we look at brands like Sinclair, Shell, Chevron. What we are requesting is consistent with what is currently out there and permitted and accepted within the city of Meridian, as well as most of the surrounding areas. So feel pretty good about the efforts we put forward to create a design that would be very complementary to the city and the development this is going to be in. So happy to answer any questions if anybody has them, but appreciate your consideration.
Any questions?
Mr. President.
Mr. Wharton?
Mr. Watts, is what's shown here the original canopy as presented, or does this reflect concessions or alterations made by?
That's an original Sinclair canopy design. So this is what's known as a Sinclair Centennial image, and the Sinclair Centennial image, which is their current image, looks exactly like this in all formats. So it's similar to what Chevron would have in blue colors or Shell in yellow. This is just what comes from Sinclair. And typically the changes on it might be which side of the canopy Sinclair is on or which side the Dinosaur is on to face traffic. But as far as the design, this is how they come out. So it's not our intent to be inflexible, but we have to adhere to brand standards when we're branded with a Sinclair or a Chevron. So it's really a reflection of what they ask us to put together to meet their brand standards.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Sure.
questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask again if there's anyone wishing to testify. All right. Any further discussion? What's your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd?
I move we close the public hearing on H 2015-0012.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on item 6D. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd?
I feel the canopy is, it's a standard that I'm sure Sinclair's got all over the United States, and and I don't see anything offensive with it. It's the same as Chevron, Gem Fuel, or any of them. They've got their standard one that they put up, and it's kind of a trademark for them. So I really can't see penalizing it on that. I don't see anything wrong with the canopy as it stands. The reduced buffer, as I have no problem with, as long as it's they've talked to the neighbors. They've evidently done their diligence of getting out and talking to everybody, and we've got a letter on file stating that's fine. So that's my view.
Other comments?
Mr. President.
Mr. Wharton?
I agree with Councilman Byrd. I think the provision with regards to the canopy, I think it's a valid condition, and it's one that I appreciate staff ensuring is enforced. I think this is an exception. From what I heard from the testimony, is somewhat unique circumstances with regards to this particular tenant, that removing this particular condition from this project, I don't think speaks to an opportunity to remove it from other projects. I think this is a unique, rare circumstance, so supportive of it in light of that.
Other comments?
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd?
we have no other comments. I move we approve H 2015-004 and to approve the buffer, but to allow the, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Pull that, we don't have a second. I move that we approve H 2015-0012 and reduce the buffer, but leave the canopy as is.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 6D with respect to the reduced landscape buffer and the condition that the canopy stays as proposed. Roll call.
Thank you. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is public hearing for RZ 15-012 EasyJet subdivision. As I stated earlier, this is a request for continuance till December 1st in order for the applicant's representative to be here and in order for them to make a presentation to City Council. And if there's anyone here that is for this particular hearing and can't possibly be here for the first, we'd welcome your comments, but since we don't have an item before us in terms of information, it's kind of hard for us to deal with your comments till you get back on the first. So I'll offer that opportunity, but again, it's your first opportunity, but it might not be your last. I don't see anybody that is stepping forward. I do have a sign up for Dennis McKibben against and Robert Nielsen against. So we have that on record, and we will continue that on with the hearing. That will be part of the hearing record. If there is no one wishing to testify at this point in time, I need a motion for continuance.
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we continue the public hearing on RZ 15-0012 to December 1st, 2015.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue item 6E. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next item is the department reports. Chief?
Mr. President, members of council, thank you for hearing our request tonight and considering it. As you recall, in the FY16 budget, we did allocate funds for one fire engine to be replaced at the tune of $535,000. That is engine 39. It's a 1993 Pierce engine. We had 2 pump failures on that. It's 22 years old with 140,000 miles on it, so that was the engine you approved to be replaced. As we went through the process of looking at our spec per the engine we just bought, we looked at areas that we could try and find to even cut costs further. We were able to, as we were back at Pierce, look at a new chassis that they are offering now that is slightly lighter weight than the Aero chassis that we just bought. Certainly still meets the department's needs based on our call volume, and we were able to bring down that single engine price to $526,800. So not a large savings, but certainly trying to find savings wherever we can. About 2 weeks ago, we were informed there's a 6% cost increase coming effective November 30th of this year that we did not anticipate. That's a breakdown of 2 increases. One is a 3% increase in the HGAC government contract, which our city uses to buy capital items. It does give us our best pricing for fire engines going through that government contract. And then another 3% increase through Pierce as a result of federal emissions requirements coming to new fire engines. As we learned that, we sat down and met with Stacy Kilchinman, the CFO, as well as Councilman Borton, just to articulate that change is coming. And in working with Stacy, identified a option to purchase 2 this year. Certainly wasn't in the plans going into this budget year, but this is an opportunity that has presented ourselves almost out of financial crisis with the increase. That change, that increase amounts to $31,608. I even got down to the 8. If you order multiple engines at the same time, there's additional savings through Pierce, so that's another $17,100. If 2 are ordered, which brings the price per engine down to $518,250, which is the budget amendment amount before you. In working with Ms. Kilchinman, there is currently $458,000 in the public safety fund. You all allocated 1% last year to go into that to start planning for replacements of engines. In addition, we did receive a check for $12,000 from the sale of our 1982 Pierce last year. That has been put into the fund very conservatively. We did some research to find out if we sold 2, what are they going to be worth on the open market. That conservative figure is $50,000. We were told anywhere from 75 to 85. We wanted to make sure we were being very conservative, not bringing you a number that's way beyond what we could bring. If the second engine is approved tonight, it would replace the current engine 35. That's a 2002 Pierce, 13 years old with 160,000 miles. For some of you that were here at the time, that was originally engine 31 when new Station 1 was built in 2000. That's where that engine was originally housed. We did move it out to Station 5 to try and keep the miles down on it as long as we could. So that is the request before you tonight. I'll certainly stand for any questions that I can answer.
Questions for the chief?
Mr. President. Chief, the proposed engines, about $8,200 less than the one we just replaced. I recognize it's lighter. What other differences are we looking at? I mean, where's the difference in the 8,200?
The biggest cost is just the difference in the chassis. If I get real technical, it's in the frame rail. And I'm going to try and articulate as best I can, remember from memory. I believe we're going from a 14-inch frame rail to a 10-inch frame rail. That is the biggest cost in the steel and what it takes to put that engine together. Operationally, it does nothing to hinder our response or to hinder even the long-term sustainability of the engine based on our call volume.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, as I recall, the supplier, Pierce, has kind of a long lead time, and they keep getting longer. I wonder if there would be any advantage in or extra savings in ordering 3 of them now and tell them we don't want the third one for 10 years or 8 years or how. It may take them that long anyhow if they're having a big backlog.
Let's keep our money and make investments.
The challenging part to that, realizing the theory you're going behind, is the delivery of goods, especially capital items. If you pay for it now, certainly finance will say we need to be receiving that in a timely manner. We have been working with Stacy. She understands the lead time to get these built. So we have allocated a mechanism that if we receive it after October, we carry forward those funds, understanding it's coming mid-October, November 1st at the latest. I don't know if I could twist
Don't want to
Stacy's
do
arm
that for several
to do that.
years, though.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Mr. Borden?
if I understand the request now is to get the direction from council to bring forward a budget amendment for that sum at the next meeting. Is that correct? Or?
Councilman Warden, you should have the budget amendment before you. We sure hope.
Yeah, we don't have the form itself is not here. I know you want the direction before the 30th so the order can be placed, but
Yes.
we don't have the form.
I will find out where that went.
Mayor's office.
I've got it. A copy of it.
On your
I
desk.
went through the process, so I was thinking it was on the agenda for tonight.
So
My
other
apologies.
questions? Just for clarity, there's money budgeted already for one.
Yes.
You're requesting a budget amendment for an additional to be funded out of the public safety fund
The public safety fund, and we will be short.
and the sale of another engine.
Yep.
You're short
And
about 50,000.
change.
Yeah, there will be $48,250 taken out of the general fund that will be replaced once the engines are sold. So it'll come back to the general fund. That's the amount we're short from the public safety fund. I apologize. I thought you had the amendment in front of you.
Mr. President.
Byrd.
To clarify the framework on going down, I don't think that, I think they overbuilt. I've had the privilege of getting to go through that plant, watching it. The structure is still built the same. They just go from a 14-inch tube to a 10-inch tube, which is, but the walls are still the same. They're still 3/16-inch walls. They were putting some of these out when I was back there for the smaller departments, and I think it's well worth the savings, and because the equipment that goes on it is still all the same, works the same and everything, so. And I think we can tighten our belts and save our 6% for our taxpayers and get this done. I'm in favor of it.
Other comments, questions? Just, does the payload reduce? Less volume of water you're able to haul?
No, same size tank. Yep,
It's got the same weight distribution.
yep.
Okay.
Same suspension, everything else. And we've evaluated it carefully, and we're very confident it's a good chassis.
They talked to Ron and I back there when we were back there.
Yep.
Okay. No more questions? What's your pleasure?
Bring it.
Mr. President,
Mr. Ford?
I don't know if the well, I'll break this in two parts. Yep, I would move that we approve the budget amendment for the purchase of the second fire engine. The amount is what I'm trying to articulate because it's coming from, it's not the 48,250, it's coming
Right.
from the general fund as well. Or
The budget amendment amount is $518,250.
Mr. President, we approve the budget amendment for the fire department for the purchase of a second engine as presented in an amount not to exceed $518,250.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the budget amendment and seek signature of that. Roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Mr. President, I'll follow up on that amendment and get that to you in the absence
Good
of
idea.
the mayor. And just to close the loop, I did chat with the mayor before she left, and she was supportive of this. I meant to mention that in my presentation.
Next item, are there any other items you wish to add? Final item is the executive session.
Mr. President,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we go into executive session as per Idaho State Code 74206, items A, F, and I.
It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. Roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Thank you.
Where'd you find this?
It's over here.
Yeah.